Great. Thank you so much, Rabbi Lewis. Hi, everyone. Wonderful to see most of you. So the topic of choice is actually the topic of my second book, and something which I'm involved in probably most of my time outside of teaching is dating, relationships, and marriage is the topic. I'm happy to take questions. If we could, Hillary Heffler, I'm reading Jugo questions now. Fantastic. I hope you're enjoying it. Well, after you finish that, you can buy my second book, Will You Marry Me? Which covers a lot of what we'll be talking about this evening.
I already read that one.
Then you don't have to be here. You're done. The topic is 7 habits of highly effective daters. So we're going to be talking about dating as adults, meaning that it's not just a means of itself, it's a means to an end, to creating a long-term, healthy, lifelong marriage relationship. That's what we're looking at over here. So the first question we need to ask is, and I'll take answers, this is not rhetorical, why get married? You can unmute yourselves if you're able to and answer that question, or you can type them in. Why get married? Is that a fair question to even ask? I mean, you know where you go to college, you know where you get a job, you know where you go to law school, you know where you go on vacation, and yet the biggest decision you're going to make in your life, without a shadow of a doubt, is the decision to tax breaks. Yeah, I get that answer a lot, by the way. Yeah, and by the way, it's true. Many people do actually choose marriage for the tax breaks. I just wouldn't mention that while you're proposing to your future loved one. To start a family, to spend your life with someone. Yeah, Jewish babies. Yes, Jewish babies. How romantic. But then again, very true. Start a Jewish family and to share those special moments in your life with someone else. All these are very, very fair answers and all true. And there's many, many more of them. I want to share a different idea with you. And everything I'm going to tell you is going to be based upon this idea. And this is a very different way of thinking when it comes to starting a relationship and getting married, which is hopefully where we're going to be going with this whole dating and relationship thing. And that is to become a better version of yourself. In other words, most people think, they'll get married because I'm God's gift to man or woman, and it's wrong to keep this perfection separate from everyone else. So what I'll do is I'll just share the love and I'll make you a better person because you're not so great right now, but because of me, you're going to become fantastic. That's how most people think, They're there to make the other person become better versions of themselves. But really what you're going to be doing is working on yourself. And everything that happens to you, PM and AM, pre-marriage and after marriage, ultimately is to help you become a better version of yourself. It's funny, the Torah itself, as we know, gives us, I know you're all advanced Jewish scholars, gives us 613 commandments. The first commandment, interestingly enough, is actually, according to most, not everyone agrees with this, is to actually have a family, to get married and have kids. So it's mitzvah number 1. Before we do anything, that seems to be the beginning point, the opening. And then the Torah says something very fascinating. It says that, you know what? You're looking for your ezer kenegdo. What's your ezer kenegdo? You're looking for your helper. What's kenegdo mean? Who's going to oppose you? That's what you're looking for in a marriage partner. These are the words in the Bible, Genesis 2:18. Why is the Torah telling me to find someone who's going to help me by being against me? Well, maybe because what we're meant to be doing is improving ourselves. And in order to have self-improvement, just like when you exercise or do any kind of life achievement, there needs to be some kind of negative energy. There's got to be resistance. And so you're going to find someone who's going to help you become a better version of yourself, not because they're going to be like, oh, you're fantastic. Oh, you're the most beautiful woman. Wow, there's no more beautiful than you. You're the most handsome man. How did I get you? That's all, well and good. But that's not most of life, really, is it? Most of life is, you're late. I told you to be here by 7 o'clock. what did I tell you about being at the Goldberg bar mitzvah by 7? And my mother said, we're going to be on time for Rosh Hashanah, and you're late. And you're like, where's the love? Where's all the fun? Where's the commitment? So the kenegdo really comes to help us become better versions of ourselves. Is there a kenegdo? Not so romantic, but that doesn't mean it's not so true. The Torah then says, you know what? That's the beginning point. You're going to find someone who's going to resist you, hopefully be resisting to you, but resist you and let you become a better version. But then again, you're going to become basar echad. Basar, says the Torah, means flesh, and echad means one. You're going to become one flesh. What does that mean? How to become one flesh? So the rabbis give different interpretations of these words. Some say you become best friends, right? That's really what your spouse is going to become. You're going to spend most of your time, right? Spare time for sure, outside of work, together with that person and with your family. Others say, no, it's your children. Basar echad actually means that your kids become, from both you and your spouse, will become versions of you. And we know that genetically they're going to be 50% you and 50% your spouse. Although, I'll be honest with you, when you have kids and sometimes they misbehave, parents have this habit of saying, you know what? That's not from my side of the family. That's so like your mother, right? So when you get into a fight, what do they always say? Nah, that's not from me. That's your family. That kid, that's so you. Look at that child. Look at the size of that head. It's like a watermelon. That's not from my family. But that's not the truth. The truth is that kids are 50% Ima and 50% Abba. That's the genetic truth. However, there's a book called the Sefer Mitzvah Gedolot, and he gives a fascinating answer to this idea of what is one flesh, basar echad, whether it's producing kids or becoming best friends. He says, imagine you're in the kitchen, and you see me. I'm in your kitchen for some, strange reason, and I'm cutting meat in your kitchen. And as I cut the meat, you see me cut my hand, and I then hit my hand that cut this hand. What did you do that for? Or you see me walk down the street, and I trip up with my left foot, and then you see me kick my left foot with my right foot, and I'm like, what'd you do that for? Why'd you trip up like that? What would you think about me if you saw me do that? Hit my own hand for cutting myself, or tripping up and then kicking myself? You think this rabbi's gone completely meshuggah? Sugar? It's the same thing. You become basar and you become one being. How can you be against this person? How can you be not connect to this individual when really, when it comes down to it, we are one flesh? Because when you shout at your spouse, you're really slapping and hurting yourself, because you become a team. You've created this new entity called Jewish People Incorporated, the Jewish family. And if you look in the Torah, most of the stories that we have in the Torah revolve somehow in some way around family and extensions of it. That's really what we are. We're not a synagogue-based religion. We are a family home-based religion. You could be a very, very, maybe Rabbi Lewis will mind me saying this, a very holy Jew and never step into a synagogue once. But you can't say that about being at home with your family. That obviously goes against everything that we believe. So we are a family home-based religion. That doesn't mean that if you don't have a family and you're not married, you cannot do mitzvot. Obviously, that's not true. But ultimately, that's hopefully the goal that we are going towards. Now, there's a lot of challenges when it comes to dating. Right? Oh, just one quick story, by the way. Just came to my mind. I must tell you. There's a great rabbi called Rabbi Aryeh Levin. And there's a book, which I have somewhere on my shelf over here, called A Tzaddik in Our Time. It's a wonderful book about this great tzaddik, great righteous Jew, who lived in Yerushalayim. And he was very short, and everyone loved him. He was one of these rabbis that everyone loved, used to visit the prisons. And this is, going back into the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And he was really, really a very special individual that everyone seemed to love. The religious, the non-religious, not many such characters, unfortunately. There are some, but not many characters that everyone seems to love throughout the Jewish world. Anyway, he was married for a long, long time. And the stories told about his life, and actually the book is literally just stories about him, that his wife had certain foot problems, just epidemia, whatever it was, and he had to go to the doctor with his wife. So he accompanied her. And they're in the waiting room, and this was a religious doctor from Jerusalem. He welcomed this elderly Jewish couple into the surgery. And he said, how can I help? And Rabbi Aryeh Levin spoke up first and said, my wife's foot hurts us. Yeah? It's not her foot and my foot. It's our foot. It's basar echad. At that point, you've become a unified whole. That's the goal. That's the goal that we're going for over here. Okay, truth be told, if you're out there, you're dating, and you know how difficult and challenging it really is. Okay, we haven't even started our 7 habits yet. But one of the main challenges I have found from my years of counseling and being involved in, I've also performed at this point nearly 150 weddings. Rabbi Lewis knows that. So, and I'm involved with the couples that I marry, sometimes more, sometimes less, but I always have a good idea what's going on before, during, and after the marriage as well. One of the big challenges I found at dating today is what I call TMC. Too much choice. You know, your ancestors, wherever they came from, whether it's Poland or Russia or Persia or Libya, wherever it was, or Afghanistan even, kind of just like met someone. You were very young, in your teens, right? That's just the way it was. You needed someone who was gonna, be there for you, and you ended up kind of like just marrying them because your parents said, "Yeah, you like him, yeah, he's all right. You like her, that's fine." Now we've reached a world where everything is flat, and unlike in the old days where you pretty much had to marry someone from your town or your village. I mean, if you're a big knocker, you got to date someone from the next village. Right now we have this world where we're just like inundated with possibilities. This is one of the great, I'm not saying I have many answers to that challenge, but it is a very, very big challenge. One of the things we're going to talk about today is how important it is to have a guide when it comes to dating. You have someone take care of your car, doctor takes care of your body, someone takes care of your taxes. You need someone to give you advice during your dating years, or hopefully months, to help you weed through, to navigate this very, very difficult time and challenging time. That's for sure. Okay. Now, one of the main reasons we've mentioned already to get married, hopefully, if we are fortunate enough, is to have kids, to create the Jewish people, and actually that's what the Sefer Chinuch, it's a book written, well, we know he's a Rishon, this individual, this rabbi who wrote this book. We know he lived in Barcelona, but we don't know too much about him. But he actually says the real purpose of marriage is to perpetuate the Jewish people. Now, I found that rather perplexing because that's really it. Just have kids so they can have more kids, or we just like cats, like, having litters. Right? That's what we're doing. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than that. I have a friend of mine who was flying from Israel to London many years ago. And he said he was on the plane, and he was flying with his kids. I think he had at that point 3 or 4. Now he's got whatever, 7 or 8, whatever it is, And he told me that he was on the plane with this guy, and this guy was like, you get to schmooze with people on. Every rabbi's got a story about a plane. You'll notice that. Every rabbi's always got stories, and the only movies they watch are on the plane supposedly, but they're always on a plane for some reason. Always a story. That's when you get to meet people you don't normally talk to. It's good to get out of your comfort zone. So he's talking to this guy on the plane, and the guy says to him, "Wow, all these kids are yours?" He says, "Yeah, thank God." So he says, "Me and my wife, we got married a few years ago. We don't want any kids." He says, "Why not?" He says, "I'll tell you why not. Because this is a very cruel, mean, nasty world. We think it's immoral to bring children into such a world like this, with so much suffering and difficulty and challenge." And my friend heard that, and it is a very difficult world. But he responded the following way, and I think this is what the Sefer Chinuch is saying. He says, it's true. It is a difficult world. And it is terrible, and there is a lot of suffering, but my kids are going to make this world into a better place. I think everything we're going to talk about is founded in those words. And that's what the Chinuch is saying. We don't have kids just to have kids, right? Just to buy, the latest beautiful stroller, the Bugaboo, whatever it is. I don't know what's in style right now. I'm, thank God, past that stage of life, But there's got to be more. What are we creating over here? Right? What is the purpose? What do I want my children, to be able to bring their unique character traits and abilities and virtues? How are they going to make the world a better place because of that? That's really the question that everyone needs to ask themselves. Okay, we have 7 habits we have to get through. Let's have a look at them. Habit number 1 is find common goals. You want to find someone who you can become partners with in fulfilling your life's mission. Number 2, work on yourself, not on your partner. Okay. Now we're going to go through these in more detail. Number 3, realize that no one marries someone perfect except my wife. Number 4, and number 4 is a topic in of itself, which is, I have a lot to say on this topic. Watch out for an abusive person. Okay. And there are signs that we need to look out for over there and research that needs to be done. Number 5, don't let your love be dependent on things. There's actually a mission in Pirkei Avot, but there's a lot to say on that as well. Number 6, and I'll tell you how to do this. Make a list of realistic qualities you're looking for in a partner. And number 7, which I mentioned already, appoint someone as your mentor. That's very, very important. It's very difficult to do it alone. And there's so many wonderful people and so many resources, right? More than I had when I was dating. I pretty much found my rabbi and used to bombard him with questions, you know. Now, thank God, we have books and videos. There's a lot that you can look into, but you need someone who's going to be there for you to answer your questions. Excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold. Excuse me. Okay. So number 1, find common goals. There was a Gallup poll a number of years ago, and they asked from the divorces that they looked into, what was the main reason for divorces? Actually, I read even more recently, I think something like a quarter to a half of divorces somehow mentioned social media and reasons for their split up. I will just mention that. I mean, there's a lot to say on that as well. And I've got a lot to talk about that as well in terms of, you know, a lack of boundaries when it comes to social media, especially for married people, especially. But this particular poll said that 5% of divorces were because of physical abuse, 10 to arguments over money, family, or children. And we'll discuss money. Money is a big thing that takes a long time to work through. That's another whole topic in and of itself. But 17% to infidelity. But 47% of divorces, says this Gallup poll, were attributed to incompatibility. You want someone you can be compatible with, someone you have stuff in common with. Now, you may have realized, you know this, right? You've got to be living under a rock if you don't realize that the average age of marriage has risen greatly over the past 4 or 5 decades. I think the average age for marriage in the 1960s, I believe, was early 20s and a little bit younger for females than males. It's gone up, I believe, 1 year a decade. Right now, most guys and girls I speak to, unless they're very religious and they're shomim gear, they're not, you know, physically intimate, which for them is pretty much one of the main motivations, I'll be honest with you, to get married, right? Let's just be honest and truthful about it. It's just the way it is. But nowadays, I find I got guys in their, you know, early to mid 30s, I found, who are still, and women too, you know, late 20s, and still just, you know, don't feel as though they're in the zone yet and prepared to get married, you know. Actually, I read an article yesterday. People send me a lot of stuff, by the way. That one of the highest divorce rates come from people who live together before they get married. Interesting that. That was just an article for the Wall Street Journal just yesterday. Statistically speaking, why that is, we can discuss another time. So people are putting off getting married, as I don't tell you this, you know this through your own anecdotal, you know, evidence and friendships, I'm sure. But according to this report by Reuters that I have in front of me from June, many people are very nervous that people are going to take their money. Unbelievable, right? I'm scared to share my life with someone because, you know, it's my life and it's my money, you know? I mean, listen, people are entitled to take care of their things, but ultimately we're trying to create a partnership over here, you know, create a unified whole. And that's going to leave you vulnerable, you know? I mean, we live today. I have a million things to tell you. I don't know how long I have, but I'll keep going until Rabbi Lewis, you know, blocks me. But we live today in a world where people are really afraid of intimacy. You know, I don't mean physical intimacy. There's no fear of that. We'll just jump in, right? I mean emotional intimacy, you know? And intimacy is a great word. I like to point out. It's actually a contraction, I think, of a few words. Intimacy equals into me, you see. Right? You have to, you know, become vulnerable. And people are scared to do that. You know, I deal with couples. I'm actually met with a couple recently, been dating for 2-3 years and still haven't had any real emotional intimacy. You know, it was a lot of fun and vacations, having a good time, but there was nothing really there. It was a very, you know, vapid relationship that they were going through, you know? Okay. We have to get through 7. So let's just jump to number 2. Oh, but, you know, I should mention, actually, People, before they get married, no matter what age you are, even for a second marriage, there are certain things you need to talk about before you're married. Certain conversations. I have a list. If you want, you can email me. I'll add my email. Thank you, Rabbi Lewis, for posting that article. Yeah, that was yesterday's. Yeah, thank you, much appreciated. People need to figure out what they want from life. Where are you going? Right? What do we do? What do we want from life as a couple? Do people drink or not? What was your childhood like? There's a list of questions I have. I think I have 36 questions I put in my book, actually, which is available on Amazon.com. Shameless plug. Which, you should be asking. I know people who date for a long time and don't really get to the nitty-gritty of real questions and stuff that needs to be discussed. Money is a big thing. It really is. I don't just mean people with lots of money, People with lots of money have it sometimes worse. People have, very little money. Right? But what does money mean? How do we relate to it? The Hebrew word for one of the Hebrew words for money is kesef, which comes from nichsof. We have a great desire for it, and also zuzim. Zuzim comes to the word zaz, which means to move. It moves from place to place. Right? So how much does a person value their money over building a real relationship? What are their financial goals? All this is very important. And do you want children? All right. And how many kids do you want? I mean, that's obviously open for change. Some people have one, and then, had a friend of mine, he said, I always wanted 3 kids. Now I have 2. I want 1. So, okay. Number 2, work on yourself, not on your partner. There's a wonderful book by Harville Hendricks called Getting the Love You Want. And he says, whether or not you realize it, the full potential of an intimate, joyful, lifelong union depends not on your ability to attract the perfect mate, not on the ability to attract the perfect mate, which is what we're all trying to do, but on your willingness to acquire knowledge about yourself. It's really about you. Right? It's hard to accept that because, I'm perfect. You know who I am. Nothing wrong with me, And as Deborah Tannen says, everyone wants to be independent. But independence is a key because a means of establishing status is to tell others what to do and taking orders and humbling yourself. It's a lot of humility. Let's think about it. And I've been through it myself. We all have, you'll be a successful, whatever it is, business person or, I don't know, rabbi, or maybe you're working in a bank. I don't know. You have an amazing day. You have people following you and you're helping people or you're making a vast amount of money. And you feel good about it. You come home and your spouse looks at you and says, take the garbage out. Me? I take the garbage out? He goes, yeah, take out the garbage. I just go home and say, yeah, but the garbage stinks and someone's got to do it. Then why do you do it? That's where the fight begins. Really, it's a very humbling experience. And having kids, it really can humble us, So that's definitely part of the, I call it the miracle grow that comes with every relationship, is the potential to humble ourselves. And that leads us perfectly into number 3 is, no one marries someone perfect. Now, this is a topic in and of itself to speak a long time. Let's give you the headlines over here. There is an idea in Judaism, which we see mentioned in a number of places. Even the Gemara does talk about it. The Talmud does talk about it. The idea of a soulmate, a zivug. Everyone has a soulmate. According to some sources I read, you may have 3, 2, 3. Some say even 7. I don't know what that means. Does that mean that there's 7 people out there? I got to find one of them. So the way we're really picking up on this class is, well, again, maybe it's not like 7 different people, but 7 people out there who can help you become a better version of yourself. Remember, that's the thesis we're working on over here. Let's put it this way. A person could actually divorce their soulmate. It's possible. It's an unpleasant thought. But just because you marry the person you're meant to be with, right? Let's just assume there is such an individual, which the Gemara does seem to hint at by saying before a person is born, God has a certain individual who's waiting for them. But leaving that aside, it's possible you don't do the right work, you could divorce them. According to stories in the Torah, it's possible that people even give up on their soulmate. Right? We know that Esav and Yaakov, Esau and Jacob, were meant to marry 2 sisters, Rachel and Leah. It was the older one for the older one and the younger one for the younger one. Right? And Esau was meant to marry Leah. However, he didn't want to become part of that family. He didn't want to create the Jewish people. He wanted to do his own thing. So he married from outside of his family. He married people he probably shouldn't have married. And that's why Jacob had to end up marrying two sisters, right? Which, by the way, is forbidden in the Torah, but the Torah hadn't been given at this point. This was pre the giving of the Torah, before the Mount Sinai experience. But even so, God had to bury Jacob with only one wife, because later on people would see him married, buried next to two sisters he was married to. It would have been a bit embarrassing. So Rachel was buried in Bethlehem and Bethlehem for other reasons too. But there is an idea that you have a soulmate, someone you are meant and destined to be with. But even if you do have the merit of finding that person, it doesn't mean that it's going to be fantastic hunky-dory. It doesn't mean you just float around in your pajamas and never fight. That's just not the way it is. It's still going to be Ezer Kenegdo. This is the person that's meant to bring you to your full potential in this world, and that can be very, very difficult, So everyone's looking to, fall in love with their soulmate, But really what you're meant to be doing is growing in love, This is what we're meant to be doing. There's I don't know if it's still there. I used to give classes at Rutgers University, and there's a marriage project survey by a guy called Dave Popenow. He's written a lot on this. I use a lot of his stuff. He says that soulmate is the term of the hour. It's a big change, he says, from times past when you maybe hoped a spouse would be a soulmate by the end of your life, right? You don't start off looking for such a person. So what you're actually looking for while you're dating is potential. You're not looking for a finished product, not an emotionally finished product, not a financial finished product, you just have to go back, speak to your grandparents if you have the merits of still having them, and say, most people were very, very poor when they got married, and they remained poor for a long time until they were, able to kind of to make it. Okay, so you don't marry this finished product. Okay, habit number 4. How long do I have, Rabbi Lewis? Can another 10, 15 minutes can we handle? Thumbs up. Okay. Number 4. This is a big one, and this really is a talk in of itself. I have a lot to say on this one. Watch out for an abusive person. I'm fortunate that most marriages I've performed and I've been involved with, most did not end up in divorce. I mean, divorce rates, what are they now? Who knows, 50% plus. I would say maybe 5 to 10% of the marriages that I performed did not end up. By the way, one of the ways you can bulletproof your marriage against divorce, there's a few things you can do. Some of them actually you can't even do. It's just the reality. If you come from a divorced family, you have a higher incidence of divorce. That's just a given statistically. But if you're just a member of a synagogue, right, or if you're not Jewish, a church or a mosque, your chance of divorce plummets. If you're just part of a community, right? But today, even that's not a. But every divorce that I've been involved with, with people I've married or outside, pretty much all of them told me that while they were dating, they saw signs and problems, but they ignored them because they'd fallen in love. And by the way, and this is going to sound weird, one of the most dangerous things you can do is fall in love when you get married. And everything. What are you talking about? Every Disney movie I watched, they fall in love. Every rom-com, they fall in love and then they get married. Yeah, it's a big risk. I mean, for the most part, you could date someone and fall in love, but you may end up not getting married. That's a lot of wasted love and time, especially. You'll have plenty of time for love after you get married. Right? You don't need to. I'm not saying you need to become like a robot, and not have like an emotional intimacy with the person you're dating. Obviously, you do, but there got to be limits. There's certain boundaries that you want to put down until that time comes. Once you get married, you can throw yourself in. So number 4 is watch out for an abusive person. Okay, watching out for people who are controlling or possessive. People have this like Jekyll and Hyde personality. I see, and there's things you can look at when you're dating to see whether this is actually something you'll be dealing with. The way to do it, one of the ways to do it is when you're dating, see how this person treats other individuals who are lower down on the totem pole. That's what I always tell people to do. How do they treat other? How they treat the waiter in the restaurant, the parking lot attendant, how they treat them, how they talk about their family, how they talk about their parents. They're still angry with their parents. Everyone's like irritated with their parents and, have problems, with the way they were brought up, and you shouldn't have done this. Okay, that's everyone, you know what I'm saying? Even your parents do. But having anger towards them, that's a red flag. By the way, not every red flag means it's a breakup, right? There's certain red flags. You got to figure it out. It's not so simple, right? People see red flags. Oh, that's it. Well, some red flags are, livable, and some are warrants to break up. Is the person you're with power hungry and manipulative? For example, I hear this a lot. Guys and girls will tell me the person they're dating has a lot of interest in how much money they make and how much money they have. And this is a big, big problem. This is something you need to watch out for, It's actually no one's business, right? Once you get married, you can, figure that stuff out. And listen, we always have an interest in how much a person has. But still, people abuse that. People who cannot empathize, Some people, listen, we have this thing called, bipolar, and people have this, and they're medicated for this stuff. That's not so bad. But some people have border personality disorder, right? Now that's really bad. That you can't medicate for. And it's rare that I see a marriage, a relationship, which can really survive or thrive. Well, a lot of things can survive. People can survive in terrible, terrible relationships. But to thrive, which we want to do in our relationships, that's something. Are people arrogant and self-centered, right? Are they paranoid? Do they lie? Are they deceitful individuals? Reminds me. Someone sent me this documentary, which I watched with my wife and my oldest daughter, who's actually in social work school, on this Tinder swindler. You see this thing? Wow, terrifying. And you watch this, if you haven't already, and you're like, come on. How can they fall for this stuff? People fall for crazy things. They allow their emotions to take over, and the fantasy kicks in, and the endorphins and the cerebellum starts going, and all the synapses start going, and we give up on the intellectual side of the relationship. Physical abuse obviously is a major red flag, but emotional abuse too. Thank you, Carly. I'm a social worker and definitely second that. I'm pleased. History of substance abuse. Not that everyone, actually, one of my doctors who gave birth to two of my kids actually is a recovering alcoholic. So it's not always a red flag, but are they in recovery, and have they remained in recovery? Okay. Number 5, don't let your love be dependent on things. And this is based on a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, chapter 6. What's that? 5:19. And the Mishnah says that if you allow your entire relationship to be based upon things, right, whether it's just good looks, or how much money or the car, eventually that goes, I have people tell me straight up, I want to marry someone rich. And I'll be honest with you, it sounds good. I'm not going to lie. You've taken a chance when you marry someone rich, because there's a lot of independence they have. They made that money before you turned up on the scene, and it comes with baggage. And many times it comes from family money. We could talk a lot about future in-laws and how to deal with them as well. That's its own book, right? Let alone talk of how to deal well with in-laws, right? But that's, you don't just marry someone, you marry their family. I was going to perform a wedding recently, and we were a week off from the wedding, and it broke off. And this is becoming more and more common. It always existed, but when the parents get too involved and they badmouth each other. I'll tell you one crazy story. I did a wedding once. It was late on a winter Motzei Shabbat, Saturday night. And there was a weird vibe under the chuppah. I can't explain it, but I have a sixth sense for this. And the next morning, the groom called me up and said, can we annul the wedding? I was like, what do you mean? He goes, well, we got into a fight. And I said something about her mother. She said something about my father. We got into a big fight. I said, you can't just annul a wedding. We had a ketubah. We had a chuppah. It was signed. We had witnesses, right? There's a civil license that I've already mailed off. You can't just annul something. I said, give it a month, a week, give it a 24-hour period. I said, over my dead body, you're going to have to work at it. These are two extremely wealthy families, by the way. I mean, the price of that wedding was probably the price of my house, to be perfect, or more, actually. Okay, if you let your love depend on things, things go. And they come and go. It's got to be based on something much, much deeper and more important. That's what the Mishnah is telling us. Number 6, okay, I have 4 minutes. Make a list of realistic qualities you're looking for a partner. I tell everyone at one time in your life, make a grid and divide it into 3 sections. Must have, important to have, and bonus. And you got to figure out what is your must have in life. And it's okay to move things around, you know. A must have when you're 18 is different to when you're 24, and it's different to when you're 30 or 34. That's okay. Right? I know people who've stayed single a long time because they've just loaded up their must-have list when really it should be put into the bonus, you know? I mean, what's a must-have, you know? I mean, you know, you can figure it out. Must be from the, you know, East Coast like me, must have the ability to control their anger, must have a college degree. I don't know, you can figure it out. And then there's important to have, you know, loves the outdoors, tolerance of my mother, you know, control of bad language. I don't know, you can think your own stuff, I know. And bonus, loves my parents. That's a bonus, you know. Sings well. I don't know. You can figure it out. Everyone's got their own thing to figure it out, you know. But you gotta kind of like. And number 7, and again, these are just the headlines today, just to get us into the zone. But you need someone as your mentor. We know that even Avraham Avinu, Abraham himself, wanted to find a wife for his son Yitzchak Isaac, and he didn't trust himself. He could have traveled back to his hometown when he wanted to find someone from his, you know, at least extended family, but he didn't. He sent Eliezer, his faithful servant, and he trusted him. That's because he was too, what we say, noger b'davar. He was too connected. He was too invested. And therefore, you need someone from outside to give you perspective. And everyone needs that. Everyone needs that one person they can turn to and says, you're making a big mistake. This is a tremendous opportunity, and you need a reality check. Or the opposite, that no, this is an abusive thing, and you've been involved in this relationship way too long, you know? People always ask me, and I'll finish with this, because it's really controversial, and they can just hang up and leave. People ask me how long you need to date nowadays to know that someone's right for you. I have an answer to that question. How long do you need to date in order to know that someone's right for you? If you're dating maturely, which we've hopefully, you know, at least outlined today, and you have a good sense of self, you're not like an 18 or 21-year-old kid who's just like messing around, dating because you want a good time. But someone who's really, you know, has a good sense of self, know you want from life. And by the way, I should say, I know 18, 19-year-olds who have better sense of selves than 35-year-olds and 40-year-olds, right? So age is just a number when it comes to that. But I think you can know by 6 months. I mean, even earlier, possibly. But by 6 months, doesn't mean you have to get married after 6 months. But your relationship, and you're an adult, and you're dating more than 6 months, and there's no other, you know, outside factor like, I don't know, an ex-wife or, you know, kids from previous marriage or major health or financial problems that are there. You could figure it out. And by 6 months, you know. You know, once you hit a certain point, you just, you know, you're just dragging it on, you know? And if it ends up at the chuppah, so well and good. But if not, you've taken a person's time. And time is the most precious gift that we have because it's unreturnable. Right? You can return things you stole, but you cannot return time. Okay, those are our 7 habits. 8:40. We've reached the end. Thank you all for joining. Hope you've gleaned something from this conversation. I'm going to put my email so you can definitely reach out to me at any time with questions, thoughts, or comments. It's rl@rabbilawrence.com. Hope you all enjoyed tonight's presentation, and do be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Hajioff. Thank you. If you want to buy a book, you can just Google, put in Rabbi Hajioff's name into Google, and I'm sure that his book will come out there. Okay, right now, so for those of you who are new to Mesorah Mondays, we're going to break up. We're going to break up into breakout rooms. Mati, are you good for a room? Can you take a room, Mati? We're going to hope yes. Okay, we're going to open them up, and here we go. We'll come back in 15 minutes, and then we'll wrap up with a trivia question and some prizes, and then we'll call it a night. Okay, here we go. We'll see you in 15 minutes. Mati, can you do a room? Oh, Esther's here. Okay, Esther assigned to
Very nice. Gene, I like your background.
Thanks, man.
Okay.